The Galactic Council had seen many species attempt the Predator test. Brave warriors from across the galaxy, each convinced they possessed the cunning and skill to outwit the most dangerous hunting simulation ever created. The Zephyrians with their 4 arms and lightning reflexes. The Korathans with their natural camouflage and venomous spikes. Even the mighty Vanguard, standing 12 feet tall with armor-plated skin that could deflect plasma bolts. All of them failed, spectacularly. Commander Vex 9 watched from the observation deck, his 6 eyes scanning the latest batch of applicants with what could only be described as cosmic boredom. The test chamber below stretched for miles, a perfect recreation of the most hostile environments known to galactic civilization. Swamps that could dissolve bone, forests where the trees themselves were predators, and valleys where gravity shifted without warning. "Another group thinks they can succeed where thousands have failed," muttered his assistant Kira 7, her tentacles coiling with amusement. "The arrogance of these species never ceases to entertain me." Vex 9's mandibles clicked in agreement. Predator test had been designed by the ancient architects as the ultimate trial. Only those who could survive its horrors were deemed worthy of joining the elite Hunter Corps, the galaxy's most feared military unit. In 300 cycles, not a single being had passed. The current batch looked particularly unimpressive. A Thraxian whose confidence seemed inversely proportional to his actual combat experience. An XRE female who kept checking her reflection in her polished battle claws. And then there was the human. Oh, the human. Vex 9 had laughed when Captain Maya Singh's application crossed his desk. Humans were barely out of their technological infancy, having achieved faster-than-light travel only 50 standard years ago. They were soft, pink creatures with no natural weapons, no armor, no enhanced senses. What could possibly make this particular primate think she belonged among the galaxy's deadliest warriors? "The human actually volunteered for this," Kira 7 observed, studying her data pad. "No conscription, no pressure from her government. She just asked to participate. Suicidal tendencies are common among primitive species," Vex 9 replied dismissively. "At least her death will be quick. The simulation rarely keeps weaklings alive for more than a few minutes." Below in the preparation chamber, Maya Singh checked her equipment one final time. Standard issue survival gear, a basic energy weapon, and emergency rations that would last 3 days if she was lucky. The other contestants had brought enough weaponry to level a small moon. She carried a knife, a length of rope, and what appeared to be a collection of random plant materials in a small pouch. The Thraxian, Borak Prime, sneered at her preparations. "Human, you realize this is not a camping expedition, yes? The simulation contains apex predators that have driven entire civilizations to extinction." Maya looked up from tying her boots, offering him a smile that somehow managed to be both friendly and slightly unsettling. "Thanks for the heads up. I'll keep that in mind." Borak Prime's scales rippled with confusion. Was this creature mocking him? Impossible. No species could be that foolish and still achieve space travel. The Nexari, Zara Flux, examined Maya with predatory interest. "Your physiology indicates you are prey, not predator. Your eyes face forward, yes, but your muscles lack definition. Your reflexes appear adequate at best." "Adequate gets the job done more often than you'd think," Maya replied, testing the tension on her rope. "Besides, I didn't come here to win any beauty contests." The loading bay filled with the low hum of charging energy as the test chamber activated. Holographic displays flickered to life, showing the vast wilderness that awaited them. A dense jungle gave way to rocky canyons, which merged seamlessly into fetid swamplands. Somewhere in that nightmare landscape, 3 ancient artifacts waited to be collected. Find all 3, reach the extraction point, and survive long enough to tell about it. Simple in concept, impossible in execution. Contestants, prepare for insertion, announced the facility's artificial intelligence, its voice echoing through the chamber with mechanical precision. To be advised that medical assistance will not be available once the simulation begins. Death is permanent, Retreat is not an option. Borak Prime flexed his considerable muscles, combat implants glowing beneath his scaled hide. Zara Flux extended razor-sharp claws that could slice through titanium. Maya Singh cracked her knuckles and checked that her knife was secure. The insertion pods opened with pneumatic hisses. Each contestant would be dropped in a different location, forcing them to navigate the hostile terrain alone. Maya settled into her pod, noting with dark amusement that it felt remarkably similar to the drop pods she had used during her military service on Earth. Some things, apparently, were universal. Final warning, the AI announced. The simulation contains genetically modified organisms designed to hunt and kill with maximum efficiency. Standard weapons have proven ineffective against most specimens. Proceed with extreme caution. Maya's pod sealed shut. Through the small viewport she could see Borak Prime making final adjustments to what appeared to be a portable plasma cannon. Zara Flux was testing some sort of personal shield generator. Both of them looked supremely confident in their technological superiority. Maya closed her eyes and focused on her breathing. Her grandfather's voice echoed in her memory, sharing stories from his time in the Amazon rainforest during Earth's old wars. Technology fails, Maya. Equipment breaks. When everything goes wrong, you fall back on what evolution gave you. Your brain, your instincts, and your willingness to do whatever it takes to survive. The pods launched. Vex 9 settled back in his observation chair, multiple screens displaying the contestants' vital signs and locations. Borak Prime had landed in the Rocky Canyon region, immediately beginning construction of what appeared to be a fortified position. Zara Flux had touched down in the swamplands, her natural agility allowing her to navigate the treacherous terrain with fluid grace. And Maya Singh had landed directly in the heart of the jungle. Interesting, Kira 7 observed. The human received the most challenging insertion point. Random chance, or did someone want to ensure her quick elimination? Vex 9 said nothing. He had not mentioned to his assistant that insertion points were not, in fact, random. The human's reputation had preceded her. 3 tours of duty in Earth's most hostile environments. Survival specialist. Expert in something called asymmetric warfare. Her military records were classified, but what little information was available suggested she had spent considerable time in places where conventional weapons and tactics proved useless. The jungle canopy closed above Maya like a living ceiling, filtering the artificial sunlight into shifting patterns of green and gold. The air hung thick with humidity and the constant buzz of insects that sounded suspiciously larger than anything she remembered from Earth. Vines hung like natural cables between massive trees whose trunks could house entire cities. She moved slowly, testing each step before committing her full weight. The ground felt spongy, composed of decades' worth of decomposing vegetation. Something large crashed through the underbrush nearby, but she resisted the urge to investigate. Rule 1 of jungle survival: avoid unnecessary contact until you understand the local ecosystem. Her first priority was water. Despite the humidity, she would need a reliable source within hours. The simulation was designed to be realistic, which meant dehydration would kill her just as efficiently as any genetically enhanced predator. She followed the subtle slope of the land downward, listening for the sound of running water. 20 minutes into her descent, she heard screaming. The sound came from the direction of the canyon, where Borak Prime had established his position. Maya paused, head tilted, analyzing the audio. The screams had a particular quality that spoke of genuine terror rather than mere pain. Something had gone very wrong, very quickly. The screaming stopped abruptly. Well, Maya murmured to herself, that's not encouraging. She continued her descent, moving even more carefully now. Whatever had taken out Borak Prime possessed enough firepower or cunning to overwhelm a heavily armed Thraxian warrior in a fortified position. Good to know. The sound of water reached her ears before she saw the stream. It bubbled cheerfully between moss-covered rocks, looking deceptively innocent. Maya approached cautiously, remembering her training. Beautiful things in hostile environments were usually the most dangerous. She knelt beside the water and performed a series of simple tests. Clear, no obvious discoloration, no strange odors. She wetted her finger and touched it to her tongue. Slightly metallic, but no immediate burning sensation. Probably safe for consumption, though she would need to purify it first. As she filled her water containers, movement in her peripheral vision made her freeze. Something large was watching her from across the stream. Maya turned her head slowly, keeping her movements smooth and non-threatening. What she saw made her understand why Borak Prime's screaming had stopped so suddenly. The creature stood nearly 8 feet tall on 4 muscular legs, its body covered in scales that shifted color to match the surrounding vegetation. 2 additional limbs ended in what could only be described as organic plasma cannons, biological weapons that pulsed with contained energy. Its head resembled a cross between a crocodile and something from humanity's worst nightmares, with rows of teeth designed for both cutting and crushing. Most disturbing of all were its eyes. They showed clear intelligence, studying her with the same analytical focus she was applying to it. This was not a mindless beast. This was an apex predator with the cognitive capacity to plan, adapt, and learn. Maya remained perfectly still, water containers forgotten. Any sudden movement would likely trigger an attack, and she had no illusions about her chances in a direct confrontation. The creature's natural weapons could vaporize her before she could draw her knife. Instead, she did something that would have seemed insane to any other species in the galaxy. She smiled and began to talk. "Well, hello there, gorgeous," she said conversationally, her voice calm and steady. "I was wondering when I would meet one of the locals. You are absolutely magnificent." The creature's head tilted slightly, clearly surprised by her reaction. In its experience, prey species either fled in terror or attacked in desperation. This small pink creature was doing neither. "I'm guessing you are what happened to my friend with all the fancy weapons," Maya continued, slowly lowering herself into a sitting position beside the stream. "Poor guy probably tried to blast his way through every problem he encountered. Not very creative thinking." She reached into her equipment pouch and withdrew a small wrapped item. The creature's eyes tracked the movement, plasma cannons charging with a low hum. Maya unwrapped what appeared to be some sort of food bar and took a bite. "Emergency rations," she explained, chewing thoughtfully. "Tastes like cardboard, but it keeps you alive. I don't suppose you would be interested in sharing?" "No, I thought not. You strike me as the type who prefers your meals fresh and screaming." The creature remained motionless, clearly uncertain how to process this unprecedented situation. Its instincts told it to attack, but something about the human's behavior triggered a different response. She showed no fear, made no threatening moves, and seemed genuinely interested in conversation rather than combat. Maya finished her food bar and carefully returned the wrapper to her pouch. "You know, back on Earth I spent a lot of time in places like this. Jungles, swamps, places where everything wants to kill you. The secret is not trying to fight the ecosystem. You have to become part of it." She stood slowly, movements fluid and non-threatening. The creature tracked her motion but did not fire. Maya picked up her water containers and secured them to her belt. "The thing about apex predators," she continued, backing away from the stream with deliberate slowness, "is that they are usually territorial. You have established this area as your hunting ground, and I respect that. I am just passing through, no threat to your territory or your food sources." The creature watched her retreat, confusion evident in its alien features. This was not how encounters with test subjects were supposed to proceed. By now it should be feeding on fresh meat and preparing to hunt the next contestant. Maya reached the edge of the clearing and paused. "It has been a pleasure meeting you. I hope we can avoid future conflicts. This jungle is big enough for both of us." She melted into the undergrowth with the fluid grace of someone who had spent years learning to move through hostile terrain without making a sound. The creature remained by the stream for several more minutes, processing what had just occurred. In the observation deck, Vex 9 stared at the displays in stunned silence. Every sensor in the facility confirmed what he had just witnessed. A human had encountered one of the simulation's deadliest predators and walked away unharmed. Not through superior firepower or advanced technology, but through simple conversation and behavioral psychology. Commander Kira 7 whispered, her tentacles trembling with excitement. Did that human just negotiate with a ravager? Vex 9's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation. That is impossible. Ravagers are genetically programmed to attack any non-native life form on sight. They have never shown the capacity for restraint or rational thought. Yet the evidence is right there on our screens. The creature had multiple opportunities to kill her, but chose not to engage. Maya Singh continued deeper into the jungle, following game trails and natural pathways with the confidence of someone who understood forest navigation. She moved in a pattern that seemed random but was actually carefully calculated to avoid territorial markers and known hunting grounds. Her grandfather's voice echoed in her memory again. The jungle is not your enemy, Maya. It is a complex ecosystem with its own rules and logic. Learn those rules, respect the local hierarchy, and you can survive anywhere. An hour after her encounter with the Ravager, she heard the second round of screaming. This time it came from the swamplands, where Zara Flux had been making impressive progress toward the first artifact. The screams lasted longer than Borak Prime's had, suggesting the Nexari had put up a more significant fight before succumbing to whatever horrors lurked in the fetid waters. Maya paused to check her compass and map. 2 contestants down, 3 artifacts still unclaimed, and she had not even begun searching for the first target. The smart money would be on her joining her fellow competitors in whatever afterlife awaited failed test subjects. But Maya Singh had not survived 3 tours of duty in Earth's most hostile environments by playing it safe. She had succeeded by doing what no one expected, adapting to impossible situations, and finding creative solutions to problems that defeated conventional thinking. She smiled grimly and adjusted her pack. The real test was just beginning. The first artifact's location had been burned into Maya's memory during the briefing. Ancient architect technology, they called it. A crystalline device roughly the size of a human fist, hidden somewhere in the heart of a massive tree that the locals had designated as sacred. Sacred usually meant dangerous in Maya's experience, but it also meant predictable. She had been tracking toward the site for 2 hours when she noticed the bones. They littered the forest floor in ever-increasing density as she approached the target zone. Not ancient remains weathered by time, but fresh kills. Some still had strips of flesh clinging to them, and the scorch marks suggested energy weapons had been involved in whatever massacre had occurred here. Previous test subjects, Maya murmured, examining a skull that belonged to no species she recognized. Looks like everyone gets the same brilliant idea about heading straight for the artifacts. The tree, when she finally saw it, defied every law of biology she knew. It rose nearly 1,000 feet into the air, its trunk so massive that a small city could have been carved into its base. Phosphorescent moss covered its bark, creating patterns that seemed to shift and pulse with their own rhythm. Vines hung from its branches like natural elevators, and the air around it hummed with an energy that made her teeth ache. More concerning were the creatures that called it home. Maya counted at least 6 different species moving through the canopy above, each one clearly adapted for aerial combat. Flying predators with razor-sharp wings patrolled the perimeter in organized formations. Something that looked like a cross between a spider and a fighter jet had built webs between the major branches, creating natural barriers that would slice anything large enough to trigger them. Standing guard at the base of the tree was something that made the Ravager look like a house pet. The Guardian stood 15 feet tall on 6 legs, each one ending in claws that could punch through starship armor. Its carapace gleamed like polished obsidian, and weapon ports along its spine suggested it packed enough firepower to level a city block. Most intimidating of all were the dozens of smaller creatures that moved around it in perfect synchronization, clearly operating under some form of collective intelligence. Maya settled into a concealed position 50 yards away and observed the target zone for an hour. The Guardian never moved from its position directly in front of what appeared to be an entrance carved into the tree's base. The smaller creatures patrolled in patterns so precise they could have been programmed by military strategists. The aerial defenders maintained their routes with mechanical precision. Every approach she considered ended with her death. A frontal assault would be suicide. Stealth was impossible with that many sensors focused on the perimeter. Even if she somehow reached the tree, she had no idea how to navigate its interior or locate the artifact once inside. Any rational person would have retreated to plan a different approach. Maya Singh opened her equipment pouch and began mixing what appeared to be mud and plant materials into a thick paste. In the observation deck, Vex 9 had given up all pretense of calm professionalism. He paced back and forth on his 4 legs, mandibles clicking so rapidly they sounded like machine gun fire. Every tactical analysis suggested the human should be dead by now. Instead, she seemed to be preparing for some sort of arts and crafts project. "What is she doing?" Kira 7 asked, studying the sensor readings with increasing confusion. "Those readings suggest she is combining local flora with soil compounds. Is this some sort of human religious ritual performed before suicide?" Unknown Vex 9 admitted. "Her behavior patterns match no known tactical doctrine. Either she is insane, or she possesses knowledge that our databases lack." Maya finished applying the paste to her skin and clothing, transforming herself into something that looked more like a mobile piece of jungle terrain than a living being. The mixture would mask her heat signature and scent while allowing her to blend visually with the forest floor. More importantly, it contained chemical compounds that would confuse the biological sensors most predators relied on. She had learned the technique from an old smuggler in the Outer Rim territories, who had learned it from a human ethnobotanist, who had originally developed it based on techniques used by indigenous Earth peoples in the Amazon basin. Sometimes the oldest solutions were the best solutions. Moving with infinite patience, Maya began her approach to the tree. Instead of trying to avoid the Guardian's sensors, she moved in patterns that mimicked the local ecosystem. A rustle here, a branch movement there, always staying within the natural rhythms of the jungle. To any observer, she appeared to be nothing more than wind-blown vegetation or small animal movement. The smaller creatures patrolling the perimeter passed within feet of her position multiple times, but their sensors registered nothing threatening. The camouflage paste worked exactly as intended, rendering her invisible to both biological and technological detection methods. It took 3 hours to cover 50 yards, but eventually Maya reached the base of the massive tree. The Guardian loomed above her, weapon systems humming with contained energy. She was close enough to see the individual scales on its armored hide, close enough to smell the ozone scent of its energy weapons, close enough to notice that it was not actually looking for intruders. The Guardian's head tracked in slow, systematic sweeps, but its eyes focused on the canopy above rather than the ground below. Its weapon systems were oriented upward, designed to counter aerial threats. The smaller creatures patrolled for ground-based attacks, but they were programmed to recognize specific threat signatures. Maya's camouflage made her invisible to their sensors, rendering her effectively non-existent as far as the defense network was concerned. She slipped past the Guardian like a ghost, entering the tree through an opening that had been carved by tools beyond current galactic technology. The interior glowed with the same phosphorescent light as the exterior, but the patterns here were more complex, forming what appeared to be a 3-dimensional map of some sort. The artifact waited in a chamber at the tree's heart, suspended in a beam of pure energy that hummed with power. Getting to it required navigating a maze of corridors that seemed to shift and change based on some logic Maya could not immediately understand. Worse, the passages were guarded by defense systems that had reduced previous intruders to their component atoms. Maya studied the patterns for 20 minutes before the solution became obvious. The corridors were not random. They followed the same organic logic as the tree itself, changing in response to seasonal cycles, growth patterns, and natural rhythms. The defense systems activated only when someone moved against the natural flow. She began to dance. Not literally, but her movement through the corridors followed patterns that mimicked natural growth, seasonal change, and ecological balance. When the passage wanted to contract, she moved smaller. When it expanded, she flowed outward with it. When the energy barriers activated, she waited patiently for the natural cycle to deactivate them. The tree recognized her as part of its ecosystem rather than an invader, allowing her to reach the central chamber without triggering a single defensive response. The artifact was beautiful in its alien simplicity. A device that seemed to contain an entire galaxy within its crystalline structure, pulsing with energies that spoke to something deep in human DNA. Maya approached it slowly, respectfully acknowledging the power she was about to claim. She wrapped the artifact in a piece of natural fabric and secured it in her pack, then began the journey back to the surface. The tree's defenses remained passive, recognizing her continued connection to the natural order it was designed to protect. Emerging from the tree, Maya found the Guardians still focused on aerial threats. She slipped past it with the same ghostly silence that had carried her inside, beginning the long journey toward the second artifact's location. The swamplands where Zara Flux had met her end stretched for miles in every direction, a fetid wasteland of poisonous gases and predatory plants. The second artifact waited somewhere in the deepest part of the marsh, protected by creatures that made the previous Guardians look tame by comparison. Maya paused at the swamp's edge to modify her equipment and strategy. The terrain here required different survival techniques, different camouflage, and a completely different understanding of local predator behavior. She spent an hour preparing before beginning her approach, mixing new compounds and adjusting her gear for aquatic environments. The journey through the swamplands became a masterclass in adaptive survival. When massive serpents emerged from the murky water, Maya remained perfectly still until they passed, recognizing her as a non-threatening part of the environment. When carnivorous plants attempted to ensnare her, she moved with the patience of someone who understood that panic was the fastest way to die in hostile terrain. The second artifact lay in the heart of a massive bog, guarded by something that could only be described as a living island. The creature was so large that entire ecosystems had grown on its back, camouflaging it as natural terrain. Only the periodic movement of what appeared to be hills gave away its true nature. Maya spent 6 hours observing the creature before she understood its feeding patterns. It was not actively hunting, but rather filtering nutrients from the swamp water through specialized organs along its sides. Anything that disturbed its feeding process would trigger a violent response, but careful movement along specific routes would go unnoticed. She reached the artifact by treating the creature's back like the living ecosystem it had become. She moved with the rhythm of wind through grass, the patience of water wearing stone, the persistence of life adapting to impossible conditions. The artifact waited in a grove of crystalline trees that had grown from the creature's shell, and Maya claimed it with the same respectful efficiency she had shown at the first sight. 2 artifacts down, 1 to go. The final artifact's location made the previous challenges look like training exercises. But it waited in a valley where gravity shifted without warning, defended by predators that existed partially outside normal space-time. Previous contestants had been torn apart by forces they could not even see, much less fight. Maya approached the valley at sunset, when the gravitational anomalies were at their most stable. She had modified her rope into a complex rigging system that would allow her to anchor herself to solid objects when gravity reversed. More importantly, she had spent hours studying the patterns of the dimensional predators, learning to recognize the subtle visual distortions that marked their presence. The descent into the valley required every survival skill she had ever learned. Gravity pulled her in directions that should not have existed. Predators attacked from angles that defied physics. The very air seemed hostile to human life. But Maya had grown up on a planet where the ecosystem itself was actively trying to kill anything that did not belong. She had learned to read danger in the way shadows fell, to sense threat in the quality of silence, to find safety in places that seemed impossible to survive. The final artifact waited in a structure that hurt to look at directly, its geometry following rules that human minds were not designed to process. Maya approached it with her eyes half closed, using peripheral vision and instinct to navigate spaces that seemed to exist in more than 3 dimensions. She claimed the third artifact and began the journey to the extraction point, moving through terrain that would have driven most species insane. The gravitational anomalies tried to tear her apart. The dimensional predators stalked her through impossible angles. The very reality of the place rejected her presence with increasing violence. Maya Singh smiled and kept walking. 6 hours later, she stood at the extraction point with all 3 artifacts secure in her pack. She was exhausted, dehydrated, and covered in substances that probably violated several laws of chemistry. But she was alive, and she had succeeded where thousands of others had failed. The extraction beam lifted her from the simulation into the facility's medical bay, where emergency teams waited to treat whatever injuries she had sustained. Instead, they found a human who looked like she had spent a pleasant day hiking through mildly challenging terrain. Vex 9 stared at the sensor readings in complete disbelief. Impossible. The simulation is designed to be unwinnable. The architects created it as the ultimate test of combat capability, technological superiority, and tactical genius. Maya Singh walked into the observation deck, still wearing her improvised camouflage, still carrying equipment that looked like it had been assembled from random jungle debris. She set the 3 artifacts on Vex 9's desk with the casual confidence of someone who had just completed a routine training exercise. "Nice simulation," she said conversationally. The biological diversity was particularly impressive. Whoever designed the ecosystem really understood predator-prey relationships. "How?" Vex 9 managed to ask. "How did you survive challenges that have killed the galaxy's greatest warriors?" Maya shrugged, a peculiarly human gesture that somehow conveyed volumes. "You built the simulation to test fighting ability, firepower, and technological advantage. But survival is not about any of those things. Survival is about understanding that you are not separate from the environment. You are part of it." She pointed to the displays showing the devastation left by previous contestants. All those warriors tried to conquer the simulation through force. They saw it as an enemy to be defeated rather than an ecosystem to be understood. The moment they started shooting, they marked themselves as threats to be eliminated. Kira 7's tentacles writhed with excitement. But the predators, the defenses, the impossible terrain, were all operating according to natural laws. Maya finished. Predators hunt prey that acts like prey. Defense systems activate against actual threats. Impossible terrain becomes navigable when you stop trying to fight it and start working with it instead. She smiled at their bewildered expressions. "On Earth we have a saying. When you find yourself in a hole, stop digging." Your simulation was not designed to test combat ability. It was designed to test wisdom. Vex 9's mandibles clicked slowly as the implications sank in. The architects, they were not testing warrior capability. They were testing ecological understanding, survival wisdom. Exactly. The Hunter Corps is not meant to be an army of conquerors. It is meant to be composed of individuals who understand that true strength comes from harmony with your environment, not dominance over it. Maya Singh became the first being in galactic history to pass the Predator test. She also became the first human to join the Hunter Corps, where her unique perspective revolutionized their approach to survival training and tactical doctrine. But more importantly, she proved that sometimes the most primitive species possess the most advanced understanding of what it truly means to survive in a hostile universe. The galaxy would never underestimate humans again.